as Henrik also said, the concept of Bewusstseinskultur was introduced by Thomas Metzinger, and I will say like I will introduce the key points of it. His definition will say what it is, a culture of consciousness, and after addressing these points and this definition, we can move on and hopefully further develop during this day. All right, so the definition by Thomas Metzinger consists of 3 steps. And he says that the practice of culture of consciousness includes the following. First, it includes a scientific and ethical investigation of consciousness states. And this means that one would ask the question, what actually is a valuable state of consciousness? Yeah? So of course, this is based in an ethical system, a value system, and one could give various answers to this question. As a second step, after having, so I will just go briefly over this definition and then go into more detail. As a second step, he says that one needs to determine what the valuable states are and then systematically cultivate these states. And this is, of course, an action. Yeah? Cultivation is an action. It could be, for example, if you say mindful states are very valuable, you would use the practice of meditation to cultivate them. And then as a third step, there is the enculturation of the valuable states, of various valuable states in society. So this practice, Bewusstseinskultur, culture of consciousness, becomes part of the culture. This is how he envisioned it. And yeah, let's take a look at these 3 steps in some detail. So what is valuable? Of course, this is for a philosopher a very big question. Actually, it's based on one of the 3 biggest questions of philosophy. What is a good life? Yeah? And today, in a more technical and more scientific way, we can ask, what is a good state of consciousness? So maybe you have your own opinion about it, which consciousness states you think are valuable. And since Bewusstseinskultur is not only an individual concept, but also a more societal concept, also we as a society should think and ask ourselves, what do we as society value? Just to give you one example, an example that also the Mind Foundation does some research in, which altered states of consciousness could be valuable. Yeah, I think that everybody here in this room maybe has the idea that there's a potential of certain altered states of consciousness. And also one could ask which states of these potential states, potential valuable states, are in our current system illegal or legal. Again, the second step, after having discussed this actually quite difficult first step, is the systematic cultivation of valuable states. And I will just give an overview or explain the relevance of it. So if you want to systematically cultivate valuable states of consciousness, decisions are required to do this. And decisions for cultivating valuable states could actually be seen as the start of this practice of Bewusstseinskultur, yeah, because then actually people put this investigation, the theoretical investigation of what is a valuable state of consciousness, they put it into practice. This can be again done both by oneself and society. As a third step, the enculturation, which is actually a very big phrase, enculturation, becoming part of one's culture. So the question that I would like to ask you, and would also like to address here in this whole event, is how and where would we start with this enculturation? And I would also say that the symposium, or at least one of the goals of the symposium, is that we want to shape and develop this concept of Bewusstseinskultur further. And we want to think we want to ask ourselves, how can the concept be applied? And how practical is it? Maybe it needs more clarification, more pragmatic approaches. Also, what can be criticized about it? Yeah, what can be criticized about the concept as Thomas Metzinger has introduced it, and how can we improve it? What actually are valuable states of consciousness? Yeah, so we could have a debate about values, about ethics. And last but not least, I would be very happy if we take the first steps to define the culture of consciousness for psychedelic science. So in order to do this, I hope that we can establish a dialogue, not only between people who are already familiar with the concept, but also people who do not know that much about it or are even very critical, agnostic. Yeah, so there can be anyone who can contribute in one or the other way to further develop and improve this concept. I don't think that Bewusstseinskultur is an utopia or a top-down concept where people are just, or where a certain concept is imposed on the individual. It should be rather a free and open discourse. And I look forward to having this free and open discourse together with you, and will hand over in a second to Marvin. Thanks for your attention. And Marvin, who is one of our moderators, will introduce the first speaker of this event, which will be Nicolas Langnitz.